Hello, Transformation Challengers. Head Coach Nicole here. It is week 4 of our Transformation Challenge, and this week's tip for you is all about nutrition, which is why I'm hanging out in my kitchen with all my food. So I get a lot of questions from you guys about nutrition, and as a personal trainer, it's important to know that it's not within my scope of practice to recommend a specific nutrition or diet plan. But what I can do is talk to you about my own experience in my own life. I can also give recommendations based on Canada's Food Guide, and I can educate about things like portion control and how to read food labels. So I want to do a little bit of that today. Specifically, I want to talk about carbs and why it seems like the entire fitness industry is telling us to stop eating them. Why do these low or zero carb diets appear to work so well? Well, the quick answer is those fad diets, and unfortunately, most of the people in the fitness industry just want your money. That's all they want. But at Orange Theory Fitness, we're different. And so what I want to do today is I want to talk about the science, because that's what Orange Theory Fitness does best. So carbs, carbohydrates, are organic compounds that are found in food. And they fall into one of 3 categories. There's sugars, starches, and fibers. So those are your types of carbs. They are also one of 3 macronutrients that your body requires to stay alive, the other 2 being proteins and fats. So if you look up macronutrient in the dictionary, it's going to tell you that it's a substance required in relatively large amounts by living organisms. That's us. So to answer a lot of questions right away, yes, you do need to eat carbs. In fact, your brain cells are only capable of using glucose molecules, which is sugar, as fuel. And if it can't get that glucose from the carbs that you eat, it has to steal it from somewhere else. So it ends up breaking down muscle tissue and other proteins in your body to convert them into sugar, which is bad in many ways, but we'll talk more about that on another video. So when people talk about carbs, they tend to refer to them as a food group themselves, which is a really good way for a lot of people to get confused, and it's one of the ways that those fad diets kind of take advantage of our miseducation or our lack of education. So for a food to be considered a carb, it should contain mostly carbohydrates. So let's take a look at some carbs. So there's things like refined sugars, there's more organic sugars, more natural sugars. You've got fruits and vegetables, so like bananas, spinach, carrots. You've got beans, grains, flours, oats, baking mixes. Some nuts contain carbs. Bread, dairy products. The list goes on. But all carbs are not created equal. So let's take a look at some of these. Bananas, for example, 93% carbohydrates, 3% fat, 4% protein. But they also contain a lot of potassium and vitamin C. Bread, so this specific bread, which is an organic, a whole grain, it's also fermented, 63% carb, 21% fat, 16% protein. It also has a lot of potassium, vitamin C, calcium, iron, and magnesium. Spinach, so baby spinach, 60% carb, 0% fat, 40% protein. Also contains a lot of potassium, calcium, vitamin A, C, and iron. So just to give you an example of how, carbs are not all created equal, and just because something is considered a carb doesn't mean that it's all sugar. So when we look at breaking down the carbs, we also break them down into simple and complex. So a simple carb is something that's very basic, a basic sugar. Usually it's white. So white sugar, white bread, white pasta. They're very simple chemical compounds that our bodies break down very quickly. We digest them very quickly, and we're left with a whole bunch of sugar that we have nothing to do with, so our body stores it as fat, as adipose tissue. Complex carbs, on the other hand, they're just that. They're complex. There's a lot more going on. They usually have more fiber in them than sugar, more starch. There's also other things like fat and protein and micronutrients, so those vitamins and minerals. It takes our body a lot longer to break them down, to digest them, and at the end of it, we're left with less sugar that our body needs to figure out what to do with. So less sugar getting stored as fat. Now, I should mention that I'm a vegetarian. Some of you don't know that. I'm a vegetarian, and I also can't eat dairy. So I do eat fish and I eat eggs, but other than that, a lot of my diet has carbs in it. So I eat a lot of nuts and seeds, a lot of beans, and even though like things like almonds fits into the fat category because it is mostly fat, it does have also a lot of protein in it, but there are carbs in almonds, just as an example. So there are a lot of bad carbs out there, which I think is a lot of the reason why when people switch to these low carb diets, why they see such good results and why people think that the diets work well. It's because when you cut out those bad carbs, it helps. You see quick results. Things like prepackaged and processed foods, cereals, those cereal bars, things like that. Anything with refined sugar, grains, corn syrup. I have this because I do a lot of baking. I don't use it very much. It's been in my cupboard for like 5 years. So those are your bad carbs, things that are mostly sugar. But there's also a lot of good carbs out there, like all the rest of this stuff. The other thing is that most of us just have way too much carbohydrate in our diet. We're eating way more carbs than we should. So again, our body is left with far too much sugar than it knows what to do with, stores it as fat. So when you reduce the amount of carb that you're eating and you bring it more towards those healthy ratios, which generally accepted healthy ratio in a diet is 50% carb, 20% protein, 30% fat. When you bring it back down closer to that ratio, things start to balance out and you start to see quick results. So the biggest reason why I think that cutting carbs appears to work is that, as I mentioned, is because it works quickly at first. So everything appears to be exactly like that diet promised. But most of the time, when we start a new diet or a new nutrition plan, we start by cutting out all the garbage, so we get rid of all that bad stuff. So again, we see quick results right away. We also usually start exercising more. We start drinking more water. We start sleeping better. We start doing all these other little healthy things that contribute to those results, but we're really quick to say, oh, look how well my new diet is working, when really it's more of a mix of all those things that we're doing. But the reality is that most people cannot sustain a very low carb diet. What happens is most people start to get those really intense cravings, so diet's out the window. They've got really low energy, so they're not exercising anymore. They start to get brain fog, fatigue, they have difficulty sleeping, so there goes the rest of those healthy habits. Plus now you're less productive, and then you bounce back feeling worse than you did before. But there is level ground. There is a middle ground where working with a holistic nutritionist, a naturopath, a doctor, dietitian, those people can help you to find that middle ground, find a balance that works for you. But keep in mind that everybody's different. Every body is different. So what works for me probably may not work for you. But you could also do some experimenting, which is a lot of what I did. So I tried cutting out, I cut out all the big bad stuff. But I still eat bananas. I still eat pancakes. I still eat my tortilla chips. But you find a balance. You find things that work well for you. So I recommend starting slow. Get rid of the big bad ones first, and then see how you feel. And then try gradually reducing the amount of carbohydrate that you eat in a meal. So if you normally would have, a burger on a bun, try having that burger with all the same fixings on a bed of spinach. Or, instead of using rice as a side, get one of those spiralizers and spiral up some zucchini. Use zucchini noodles instead of pasta noodles. There are lots of little ways that you can substitute those more sugary carbs, those more simple carbs, for more complex carbs. So then what about things like cravings? Because that's something that I deal with. If you guys know me, you know that I love my chocolate. Cravings are, the struggle is real. So what do we do about the cravings? Well, carbs and sugars themselves actually create an addiction. So it's a chemical response, very similar to a drug addiction. The sugars affect your hormones, especially the ones that control your digestion and your hunger, that tell you when you're full, tell you when you're hungry. They affect your mood as well. So when you eat a lot of simple carbs, a lot of simple refined sugars, it feeds right into a yeast or a fungus that naturally lives in your intestines called candida. When the candida get those simple sugars, they go nuts. They want more. They love it. So they start releasing a chemical into your body that tells your brain that you want more. So this whole feedback loop goes. The more sugar you eat, the more the candida wants it, the more sugar you crave. And that candida can actually overgrow out of your intestines, spill into your bloodstream, get into the rest of your organs, and just totally mess the place up, totally messing up your hormone levels. And then it's just, this cycle that goes out of control. So that can be one reason why people have cravings. Definitely not the only reason, but it is one for sure. The other reason I think that people have cravings is boredom. You end up sitting, or it's habit, right? Like, how many of you go home at night, you have dinner, and then you sit on the couch to read a book or watch a movie, and you normally have something that you're constantly putting into your face, whether it's chips, cookies, whatever, right? Like, you get into that habit. And so your brain learns, okay, it's time for my treat now. Where's my snack? Getting out of those habits can help big time. The biggest reason I think that people have cravings is because they're so used to giving their body what it wants as opposed to what it needs. So if you focus on giving your body the big things that it needs first, so those complex carbs, the protein, the healthy fats, drinking lots of water, getting lots of sleep, then your body is going to start to forget about what it thinks it wants because it already has everything that it needs. So I've given you a very little amount of information here today about carbs, about sort of the way that we think about them and the way that maybe we should start thinking about them. But if you're wanting to know more, definitely reach out to me. You can email me, you can chat with me at the studio, find me on Facebook. I'm more than happy to talk with you a little bit more about this. And if there's anything that I can't answer, I can definitely point you in the direction of someone who can. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. And I hope that you all are enjoying this warmer weather. It was like 14 degrees in Barrie yesterday. Again, any questions, reach out to me for sure. Keep up the good work, guys. Really, really awesome week so far in week 4. Don't forget to book your midpoint weigh-ins. They start February 26th and run to March 2nd. So that's next week, Monday to Friday. And we'll see how everyone is doing so far. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.